Uh, Good morning and welcome. I'm Shelley Pryor. I'm a realistic watercolorist in Ontario, Canada. And every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Toronto time, I do a live stream and we do some watercolor together. Today, we're not going to be painting outdoors as I had hoped because we are under an air quality warning because of the smoke from forest fires. So today we're going to be working once again from some reference pictures. If you're looking for that reference picture, it is in the description below. So take a look there and let's see what we're going to be doing here. So this is one of the reference pictures that I took from Ireland when I was there. They have these amazing rocky cliffs there, all covered in moss and all of this kind of stuff. And I'm going to be painting this in my Arche travel journal, 6 by 10 inch, 140 pound or 300 gram, 15 by 25 centimeter. It is a cold press paper, and what I want to start with here, of course, is the drawing, since you have explained that you do enjoy the drawing process. So I'm going to start off with my reference picture, the approximate format of my paper. It won't do me any good if I start with just a square and I try to stretch it out. So having your paper the same size as your reference is a very important thing. If you don't have paper the right format, you can always sort of, like if I wanted to make a square and crop part of this, like just to do a square or something like that, I could just mark off a square in my book. But I'm going to work this format. I think I will put a little bit of a border on here and no ruler. I'm just going to eyeball it and put a little, just a little frame kind of thing on around my sketch that I'm going to do. Just because I like how it looks. Okay, something like that. And so that's what I can work within. And now, when I look, because I have the same format, I'm looking at this measurement. I'm going to find the halfway point and maybe quarter it as well. So if I quarter it like this on my reference picture, and I'll do the same for the side. This is going to give me reference points for getting it proportionally right, so that I don't have, you know, this rock way out of proportion or this place too much in the middle or something like that. I get things positioned in the right place on my paper. This was always a problem for me when I was painting or when I was sketching at a younger age, and I didn't know any better to really make the association with, you know, the distance across the page and that sort of thing. So I find this really helpful. So if I know that this is the middle, I can see that the peak of this is just a little left of center. So I'm going to put these little same marks on my sketch here. And again, I'm eyeballing these things. I'm not taking out a ruler or anything like that. If I'm actually sitting here painting this on location, I'm not taking out rulers and stuff like that. That's just a little excessive. And I want to train my eyes. I think that that's an important aspect of not using a ruler, is that I'm training my eyes to see things in the correct proportions, not just relying on a tool. So if my peak here is a little left of center, I'm going to follow down and I'm going to make a mark here. Okay, so that's where my peak is going to end. The shoreline, or where it meets the rock meets the water, is approximately a quarter of the way up, but there's a little angle like this, right? So it's not straight across. It does actually go up a bit. So If I put the same markings on the side that I did on my reference picture, this is going to help me. There we go. So this is going to start somewhere here, and it kind of comes up a little. I didn't put it as a straight angle because the the rock cliff isn't at a straight, it's not at an angle. It's just the peak of it ends up angled. So we have these diagonal lines. All right, so I like to think of my angles like a clock face. So if this were the center of my clock and this were the clock hand, this edge of the cliff here, and it's pretty straight, this one, I would say that's maybe between a 1 and a 2 on the clock face. Okay, so if this is the center of the clock, this is your clock hand, this would land, so I'm imagining a clock here, this would land between 1 and 2. So if you're not very good at sort of estimating angles, I mean, we can pretty much all read a regular clock. Now, this dip here is pretty much at the quarter mark. Okay, so I know the dip's going to come around here somewhere. So it goes up, then there's a little notch, something like this, and it comes down. And then there's more of the same angle here. So these are almost all parallel. So there's kind of an angle here. And I'm drawing what's in front, by the way, before drawing what's behind, because I don't want all these, I don't want this whole drawing back here done, and then put this drawing on top. So I'll put the other drawing behind. So I'm drawing what's in front first. And I don't know if you've ever really thought about this, but drawing and watercolor have a lot in common. And what I mean by that is that when you draw something, if you shade something in, for example, you don't shade it all in and then add white on, or you erase all of those things. You just don't paint those light areas. So in that sense, watercolor works in a similar way to drawing. All right. So there's this really, it's amazing how this is formed here, because it comes up and then it's absolutely flat ground, flat as can be. So there's this one point just a little below the quarter mark that is like almost straight across there. You can see a little bit of the green grass. So it's a little bit of a triangular wedge here. And then there's some other lines that come down, that sort of thing. But the main thing is I want to get the big shapes in. I'm not going to get into any of the detail. And I apologize for drawing so lightly. I know it's difficult to see, but it's because I know that these cliffs are really light. And if I draw them really dark, that's pretty much all you're going to see underneath the paint. Once you put the paint on, these dark pencil lines get locked in. I often get asked, how do you get rid of those pencil lines after you've painted? And it's like, well, I don't have a solution for that. I'm sorry. You've kind of dissolved the graphite and now it's into the paper and you can't really undo that. So it is important to do your drawing light. The other alternative would be to do it a little bit heavier, not with a hard pencil, because if you're using a hard pencil and you're doing dark lines, that means you're pressing really hard. You're actually indenting the paper, and if you have to make a correction, that's always going to show up in the paint. But the graphite is pretty permanent after you put that in, so I'm going to just be mindful of that. And now I would say, if I'm looking at this angle, that this other shore is coming across, and it ends up a little below the halfway mark. If this were the halfway mark, this would land a little bit below, but the starting point here is halfway down that angle. So starting here, and it's going to end up down. Below the halfway. So I'm thinking this is about halfway, and there we go. Now we have another angle. This angle here for this other far cliff. It's going to start, let's make my markings on this side, since I'm working from this side. Look at this. This starts right about there. This land actually just kind of ends right there, and then it's rock below that. So that's going to be a straightforward one to sort out. And then there's this secondary angle that comes up and continues over onto the other side. But once again, I'm looking at that clock angle. So let's imagine this is the center of the clock, right? So that's between maybe 2 and 3 o'clock angle. You know, if the clock hand was coming down, it's between 2 and 3. So of course, these pencil lines on the margins, I'll be able to erase those when I'm done. Those will be easy enough to get rid of. But this is going to start a little below that halfway mark. Let me keep this on the screen here for you. I can actually, it's a catch-22 here. If I zoom out, you won't see as well, but you can't see the reference. So I'll zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to be going from here at that slightly more of an angle than what's down here. Not much. But you notice I'm always doing the big main shapes first. Okay, so there's this kind of mossy bit that comes down into that. So that I know that's almost the point where I start to get into the ruggedness of that other section, this rugged edge here. It looks like kind of steps. Now you can take a lot of artistic license with this. If you are just trying to do a nice painting, that's fine. You can make your own edits, you can adjust it and all of that sort of thing. But if you specifically want it to look like a particular place, you do need to be mindful of all these little ins and outs. It was very interesting when I went to Ireland. Someone had, during COVID, commissioned me to paint some cliffs in Ireland. And when I went, I was able to actually see them for myself. So she had taken some travel pictures and she couldn't travel because of COVID, but she wanted some of her previous travel photos captured in watercolor. And so I did that, and then I finally got to see them. That was kind of cool. So we have this secondary line. This one is pretty much right from that quarter mark. This mark here, so it's coming up pretty much the same angle. It ends pretty much a quarter of the way across the horizontal plane. There we go. All right, so we're getting there. Starting to sort of break up this. What's the word I'm looking for? It's not a canvas. It's the paper, of course. But there's another term I'm looking for. Anyway, so I want to identify this rock here. It's actually 2 rocks, I believe. Hard to tell from this angle, but they definitely are overlapping each other. So this begins just a little left of the point, or this line almost lines up right here. So I know that much. It is below, a little below the quarter mark, so that's my quarter mark. It's a little below that. So this is the dialogue that goes on in my head. Should spend 10 minutes in my head. You go a little crazy, probably. So that can come over a little more. I'm looking in relation to the quarter mark here, and this does extend past that quarter mark a little bit, so that can come over here a little more. That's my quarter mark. The edge of this is a little bit to the right of that. So there's my quarter mark, and then I can put this here. So I know where the left side and the right side of this are going to be, and then I can start creating the angles at the top and that sort of thing. It's very unusual rock formation here. That almost touches there. Just the angle that I'm looking at this, those are almost touching. It's almost creating a tangent. Normally I would avoid that, where this looks like an arrow pointing and touching this object here, or this rock here, but it kind of it serves also as a pointer. It's when they sort of just kiss, it creates this sort of visual tension, if you know what I mean. And you know, that's why the famous, you know, the hands touching, you know, this kind of thing, they don't actually touch. You know, they're pointing, and you know that they're about to touch, so it creates this tension, and it really keeps the viewer engaged. So there's little sort of visual tricks you can use in your compositions. And then there's a few other little rocks. I think I can manage some of these smaller rocks, but I'm just going to put one or two in just to get the idea here. There's a little bit of a bigger one here, and that lines up with this peak here, kind of. So right where that comes up, that's where this rock angles up and makes this peak. Okay, so I'm going to show you something, sort of a shortcut that you can take with some of these cliffs as I'm going to do this today. All right, so I'm going to erase any of my wrong lines. So my working lines, I can erase some of those. Just get this main shapes the way I want them. A lot of these rocks at the bottom, at least, are kind of dark because they're either covered with moss or they're wet from the surf. But I want to start breaking up this back section here, because we've got a lot of sort of ins and outs, and we need to identify sort of where the moss ends and where the rock begins. So we need to find like this big shape here, and, you know, this shape in here, and, you know, maybe this shadow here. Those are the things I need to start breaking up. So we go from big shapes to smaller shapes. And I've actually got a dark over here too. So I'm just going to, that goes from the halfway point. It's a darker shape here. All right, so these are all going to be reminders. Like I said, it can sometimes be a lot like sketching, if I know that this is going to be a dark area, this can sometimes help me. If I take my pencil and just lightly shade that in, it's not going to affect my my actual watercolor, because this is going to be a dark color going over top. What I'm not going to shade or detail is all of this stuff on the light areas, but in the dark areas, I can actually come in and shade on my watercolor paper with my pencil. If you're using a very soft pencil, you'll have to wipe off the excess graphite, or you could use a kneaded eraser just to lighten it up. You don't want these areas dark, but this is what's going to help me when I'm doing this shape here. So I see that this shape here almost starts at this little peak here. All right, so we're going to go up. And again, I'm looking at an angle. If this were the center of my clock, that would be pointing to maybe 8 on the clock. And then we have this other strange shape up there. So I'm breaking it up into these sort of geometric shapes that I'm seeing. So I see kind of a boxy shape here. Then I see a almost a diamond shape in this shape here. Diamond shape without the points. This dark shape starts pretty much where this distant area is. So that starts right about here, and it comes down. Now, this is the part I'm going to shade. This is a little tip that I also use if I'm painting something like crystal, where, you know, if you were just to transfer or draw all the lines of the facets on crystal, oh my goodness, you're going to get so lost. So by lightly coloring this in, now some people will use maybe a watercolor pencil for this, which is fine. I do find that the watercolor pencils sometimes can catch, at least on cold pressed paper, can catch the tooth of the paper, and it kind of holds on to it. So you do actually see the marks of the pencil. The graphite will smear a little bit more, so it's going to give me something a little bit less permanent than the watercolor pencil. I know it kind of sounds ironic, doesn't it? But for me, this works. Another person showing you a demo might say, oh no, that Shelley's crazy. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Well, I'm just telling you what works for me. Just understand, you know, when you're taking a class from somebody, or, you know, you're a workshop or something like that, and you've got a different instructor, they may tell you things that conflict with something another instructor has told you. That doesn't mean it's wrong. It simply means it's different. And, you know, everybody has their own method, so I can share with you what works for me, because why would I teach you anything other than that? You know, that would be silly. So this works for me. That little bit of shading keeps it sorted, because when there's too many lines, it's just chaos. All right, so we have a couple of shaded areas here, and this one starts a little just left of that quarter mark. So if I'm looking here, lining up my pencil, it's just left of the quarter mark. All right, so that should be about here. and go about half the distance from here to here. The next one is pretty much centered between the quarter mark and the edge. So I'll just center it right here. And this one goes pretty much right up the cliff with a little ridge near the bottom. Now, it's not a lot of heavy, I'm not heavily shading this. It's just a few markers to help me get sorted. All right, and then there's a few smaller ones, and based on the bigger ones that I've put down, I can estimate the rest. So that is, I don't need to draw everything with my pencil. There's a lot of people that will just draw and draw and draw and draw, and then their whole painting becomes too tight looking because they're, it becomes coloring book like, and they have to stay within the lines and all of that sort of thing. If you get the major sort of landmarks on here, then it's a lot easier to sort out. So I'm going to look at the top portion here. I didn't really get this distant hill in here, but we've got like another hill in the background. And as I've got this on the screen right now, I want you to look. This distant hill is further away, and look how blue this looks. I know it's green. I saw it with my own eyes that this landscape is all green, like what we see here. But because it's so far away, it loses all its color saturation. So it's now just kind of this blue haze. So we've got this angle. It starts maybe about here and ends up here. All right, so this is going to go from here to here. So that little corner is going to be that blue that I'm going to put in there, that sort of purple blue haze. Okay, so I've got a little bit more dark here to sort out. So there's a little dark here, and then there will be some more dark through here. All right, I've got enough information. I think I can sort this out. I'm going to do one more line maybe just to divide this lighter field from the slightly darker field behind. So this goes almost to the quarter mark over here. And I'll fit that in right about here. Okay, so I have all the drawing as far as I need it to go. And I'm going to share with you a little tip about creating a lot of these cracks and things in the in this rock face here. These are almost like straight up and down. They're kind of unusual, but there are kind of like little vein type cracks within these rocks as well. And then you have these strong diagonals as well. That's what makes this so interesting, this type of rock formation. So this isn't the formula for every type of rock. If you go to, for example, Northern Ontario has a lot of the Canadian Shield exposed, right? The glaciers came through and scraped away all the topsoil and exposed all of this rock, and it's this very smooth type of rock with this almost marbling lines through it and that sort of thing. Very different from this. So this isn't the formula for painting all cliffs. It is the formula maybe for painting this one. So I'm going to zoom in. All right, and I'll just kind of flip this back and forth as I'm working. I think I'm a little too close here. Let's zoom out a little bit. Get the whole thing on there. Now I do have my little watercolor palette. This one is my just my little travel palette that I use. I've talked about this before. It's just a cheap eyeshadow that I replaced the shadow with my own paints, but most of these are Da Vinci. I have Aureolin, Gamboge, Raw Sienna, Burnt Sienna, Permanent Rose, Rose D'Or, Sap Green, Perylene Green. Now look how dark all of these look. They're very hard to distinguish. If you didn't have a little card or something to tell you what the colors are, you could get confused. So it is good to make a little chart to match your palette so that you know what you're working with. To continue, I have Cerulean Blue, Cobalt Blue. This one is called Mauve. It is it's similar to dioxazine purple. And we have Payne's Gray. Then I also have neutral tint in the slot here, and I have some turquoise, cobalt turquoise. That's what I have here. So just because this one's a really hard color to to mix out of these colors here. So, and I just really like it, and I bought a tube of it, and I'm using it whenever I can because I like it. But that's my palette. If you need to know those names again, take a look here. The only ones missing off of that are the neutral tint, which yes is a color. You can buy it in a tube, and this one is cobalt turquoise. So those two are missing on the materials page at my website. So you can look that up if you want to know what that is, including the brushes that I use and that sort of thing. So if you're curious about what brushes I use and such, it's easier to go there to find out the names and things. So one little erase here. And I'm going to start off with this tool. This is a stylus, and it is basically a little wooden tool. It's got not a point. You can see it better on this end maybe. There's a little ball point on the point of this so that it doesn't gouge your paper. Let me zoom in. Okay, so you can see the little ball on the end. Come into focus, camera. Here. There, you can see the little ball on the end. It doesn't like being this close. And there's an even smaller one on the other end, right? Oh, sorry, camera's not liking that. So let's zoom out again. Make our camera happy. And here's what I want to do. A little fair warning on this. This is a permanent, can never undo this step I'm going to show you. But what I'm going to use is the small end of this stylus, and you can see this is a pretty fine one. It's and I'm going to basically just draw in all of these marks on my paper. I'm not going to pencil them in first. I am going to draw them in. Speaking of drawing, though, I am going to draw one little thing, and that is this dark mark here, so I don't forget about it. Okay, so there's that there. So this goes almost at the point, so I've got some that's here. And I'm pressing fairly hard. So as I press, I'm actually scoring the paper. So I'm pressing in not all of the lines are dead straight, so I will sometimes find the angles. I'm looking to see, and sometimes you even get these little cross sections, but I'm going to speed this up. This also helps if you have a light at one side. So let me I'm going to bring a light over, and then I'm going to turn off the one on one side, and I might be able to see my score, what the scoring that I'm making a little more easily. And what this does is that every time I paint over something that's scored, I've damaged the paper there. So the paper wants to grab all the paint and hold it in the little crevices. So then I have these great textures. Now I may actually want to put some more textures in after the fact as well, but this is going to get a lot of the mileage done, and I don't have to get a teeny tiny little brush to paint every single one of these. So what a wonderful shortcut this can be, but it also gives us the subtlety and the fineness of some of these cracks. The heavier cracks I'll probably come in and do a little bit more with the with my brush, of course, but and then we have this line that comes down here. It's important not to make them stripes, so all spaced the same. I am closely observing what I am doing here, because as I said, this is a permanent thing. This is not something that there's an undo button for. And you may get it wrong, but as long as the general shapes in your drawing are fairly accurate, these little nuances that are incorrect are not going to be a deal breaker at all. So you can come in and do a lot of this. Don't forget, there will be some occasional horizontal ones, like where you have something that goes across like this or across here. You know, they're subtle, but they are there. So trying to get some of those in as well. And I'm just going to continue on here. Now, if I use the other end, the wider end, I will get a darker mark. It will collect a little more paint and become a little bit more prominent. But here we go. Now I'll go to the distant, and I'm not going to do every little one back there. I don't think. I think that might be a little bit much. I want to put less. I know I can see the detail because the camera picked it up, but I don't necessarily want to paint every detail just because I can see it. Because if I put less detail behind, that helps to create the visual perspective in the same way that this haziness makes that feel far away. So less detail here will make that feel like it's a step back from what's in front. And when you have something textured in front of something else that's textured, it can kind of end up merging together in the final painting. So I don't want to put as much detail. I'll put a few in because a few are important. Coming to here, and I'm going to paint some of these. Now these are ever so slightly curved, and there's a prominent line going across. It's kind of cutting through all of this. You see that line that kind of goes all across there? It's like this fracture that goes across. And it's not a straight line. That's the key thing here, is it's not a straight line. And I'm not going to worry about every single one, because I do want to do some with my brush as well, and having the light on one side allows me to see the scoring, and I don't know if I can capture that on the camera. It's pretty subtle. Oh, well, a little bit there. Maybe you can see a bit of it. Some of the scoring that I've done here. If you run your finger across, you can sort of feel the ridges. And I'm hoping that that's going to give me something pretty decent for my cracks. If not, I'm going to have to go to plan B and actually use my brush. But this is my plan for now. Not too many of the distant ones there. That one I can pretty much do with my brush. And I think I might do a few on this rock here. There's kind of these little verticals and horizontals all kind of merging together there to create a little bit of a design. We'll see what that gives us. And the interesting part of this is you don't know what you've got until you've painted it. So don't apply this to a painting that you've never done this on before, because you might not like this technique. Do a little test in your sketchbook or something like that. So I'm going to turn my light back on, and I'm going to start in with some color. Now, when you look at this picture, boy, it doesn't have very much color, does it? So I'm going to inject a little bit of color, because I think color can really bring a painting to life. So if you follow the coloring in a photo, sometimes it can be a very boring painting, but if you just follow the colors in the photograph. So I'm going to inject a little bit. And this confuses a lot of people, because they're looking at their picture and they're going, well, I don't see any of those colors. What are you talking about? So if I squint my eyes, or if I just sort of blur my eyes a little bit, I see a blue in here. I see a really deep green here. I see almost a burnt sienna or a reddish color through here. So those are all clues of where I can head with my colors. So I can have these wonderful blues in here, some warm colors as well. There's a lot of warm colors in this foreground, not quite as much in the background, but there's a lot of blues and purples back in here. So blues, purples, burnt siennas, all of those kinds of things. So I can take those ideas and exaggerate them a little bit. So I have an extra plate here just to mix some color, but I'm going to go with my palette right now, just because I can get that on screen more easily. Let's zoom out a little bit more, then you can see it all. And I'm going to get some, I'll do some cobalt. There was a little bit of gray on there. I think I'll keep that. Maybe even some cerulean. My plan is to have some variations. Maybe a little purple. So I'll put all these cooler colors here. And then over here, I'll put some warm colors. I'll put some burnt sienna. think I could probably get away with a little bit of raw sienna as well. Okay, so I don't think I'm going to use any red because red will just pop off this scene. And it's not even a real sunny day when this picture was taken. You know, you can't decide on the weather when you're traveling, but I should be looking here a little closer at the chat because I know there might be a question. Margot says, my drawing thoughts are helpful. Thank you, Margot. Yeah. That's it for questions, I guess. If you do have a question, please put it in capitals. It's a lot easier for me to see. Have I ever used this technique on lace or other paintings with different textures? I haven't used it on lace. I have used it on tree bark. It's wonderful on tree bark. But let's just have a look here. So I'm going to take a little bit of these blues. There's almost, I've got some other colors here. I opened up some tubes and they just oozed out. And I had all this paint coming out that I couldn't put back in the tube because there was pressure in the tube. So I have some greens and turquoise here. So I might even use a little bit of that since I've got it here. And I can't remember the names of the colors. I apologize. But it's like a turquoise kind of color. So let's see what happens. That's a little bright. Let's dull that down with a little purple. And my most important thing that I want to get across right now is the thinness of this color. I don't want to put heavy paint down at this stage. I'm not seeing a lot of the texture there. And if you're painting this in and it's like, oh, I did all that scoring, but I'm not seeing anything, you can score while the paint is still wet as well. And you can see that will definitely show up. So I'm dragging the stylus through the wet color, and it is scoring the wet paper. And the reason for that, the reason it shows up even better is because when paper is wet, it is more vulnerable to this scoring technique. I just didn't want to go too crazy with it, but obviously I could have done a little more. So I'm breaking it up even a little bit more. But I don't think I would have wanted to have tried doing this with a brush. This would have been a little bit awkward. So now that I've scored it a little bit more, I should be able to get a little bit more going on here. Using the side of my brush just so I don't have like a clean mark. I want it broken up a little bit. But I do want the lightness. If you put down your paint and you realize, oh, that was too much color, just take your paper towel and blot that off. And that can even add a little bit more texture to this. So it's kind of a neat effect. But this is tricky to do with a fine brush. So back to my colors here, I'm going to continue on with my grays that I'm creating from all these cool colors here. My stylus is handy because I know I want to use that as well. All right, so I'm going to use the finer end here so that I don't get really thick lines. This only works while the paint is wet. Once the paint's dry, you won't be able to score it. If it dries, then you really do have to take out your little tiny brush and create some of these little marks. So you got to hit it while it's wet. Mostly straight, like it's the general direction is straight up and down, but that doesn't mean straight lines. It means that there are a variety of different lines in here that are basically vertical. Okay, once again, if it's too much, blot some of that off and that will lighten things up. I do need the lightness of this to contrast the dark here, so I'm keeping that in mind. Carry on here. Use some of my burnt sienna again. Haven't used any of the raw sienna. Let's get some of that in there too. My warm colors and my cool colors. They always work so well together. And this is still not as dark as I need. I am basically starting with my middle values, or the lighter of my middle values, put it that way. And mixing a little bit of that because this is kind of brown. I don't want it too warm, like too warm. It's kind of in between. It's got this middle thing here, but I have to be careful I don't bite off more than I can chew because I have to get in and score this. Hope I'm not too late. There's not too much to score here anyway. Oh, I left it a little late. And I'll use the fatter end. And that pencil that I did dark there, it's reminding me to put something dark in this little section. But I'm not really seeing the pencil, so that's good. A little bit of green gold at the bottom here. Might be a little bright. Let's dull that down. I'm going to take some of this mixture here that's just that sort of brownish mixture. Get that in there. I'll come back in later, add some more darks, that sort of thing, but get more of that burnt sienna going here. The one thing I really don't like, and this is a personal preference, but I really do think it makes a big difference in painting, is that I don't like something just filled in with one color, especially one color directly from the tube. So I like to put in a warm and a cool, or a light and a dark, or there should be a transition of some type to make it a lot more interesting to look at. If it's too much all the same, it becomes a bit boring. What am I doing here? Let's see. Okay, so I have quite a bit on here. I think I'd like to put a little bit more blue. There's my hair in the paint. I still didn't get it. I'm shedding. Did I get it? Almost. There we go. No, there's still a little bit in there. Okay, I'm gonna go to my cools again. Ooh, that went on really dark, right? So just I can pull some of that off, get a little texture, and get that under control. I don't have to commit to it. All right, so I've got some variations in there that make it kind of interesting. And I'm going to hit the back section here. Now, because it's a little bit further back, doesn't seem to be as much light. You know, this pocket's light and this pocket's light, but the rest of all this seems to have a little bit of color added to it. So I'm just going to take and I'm going to have this ready for a few bits through here, but oh, that's too bright. Let's put some green in this. A little green mixed in. And I will kind of alternate between green or purple. And that's extreme. I'm not going to go that crazy, but I want to get this sort of overall, and it has to be light because of the lightness of the rock. I don't want to get the value too dark. I'll have nowhere to go if I go too dark with the values here. So I can put in a little bit of scoring here. You could also use, and this could be something to try, is a dip pen, you know, a calligraphy type dip pen. How can we prevent doing mud color? Stop stirring on your paper too much. Colors fit nicely side by side. They do not, and as long as they're only side by side and not overly blended, you shouldn't create mud. I'm also keeping I want the transition, so I don't want to stir it all together. I really want to keep this sort of fresh looking. So I'm just, as I'm going along here, you'll see I'm alternating some of the color. This could be one of my best demos or one of my worst. I'm not even sure, but we're all going to find out together. Oh, that's a little turquoise. Spread that out, keeping it thin. But I'm kind of putting a little color everywhere. And one thing that will also create mud is if you come in with a second layer, like, because I will need to darken some of this. If I come in with a second layer and I start putting new colors on top of previous colors, that can potentially create mud as well. But I find people just keep working in a spot far too long. All right, so I'm going to get some more scoring in here before I run out of time. And as I add more color, these darks, the scoring that I'm doing, it's going to show up even more. because the darker the pigment, the more it's going to collect in those cracks. But this can be a really effective way of getting some texture into things. It's absolutely fantastic for bark. Because you can basically just sort of scribble every which way, and voila, you have bark. All right, so I'm going to put a little more color through here. I'm going to try some greens in here too. Oh, not that much green. I think that's too much. I have my little shaded areas in there, and that's going to help me find those little pockets again, the little pockets of mossy areas and that sort of thing. You do have to work fairly quick with this method, but you'll definitely be able to speed things up. So the one thing I don't have along here is that burnt sienna along the bottom, but things are starting to dry here. So here's what I have to do. I have to take my burnt sienna, put it along the bottom, rinse my brush and give it a blot, and just run it along the top of that so that it melts in. Now this is the sort somebody asked about, creating mud and that sort of thing. Well, in this particular case, it's not going to be the end of the world if you get a little bit of mud, because, I mean, it's not a colorful scene to begin with, but I'm just going to come in and add a little bit of duller color. So I'm taking some purple, mix a little green in it, or something like that, and I want to come in, well, actually blue. I think I'm going to mix blue here. And a little bit stronger color. That's a bit too much. So if I put it on and it's like, oh no, that was like way too much, just blot it off. It needs to be more blue. I think even cerulean blue would be a nice option here. Yeah, that's a good one. Cerulean blue. Okay, so I'm breaking up the sections where we have the lights and darks. I love your drawing, Shelley, but being a left-handed person makes it difficult for me to follow. Do you have any suggestions for the lefties? Well, I would still start here, but you might start from this side and go that way to prevent putting your hand in any of the paint. You would work in this direction. As for following along step by step, that does make it a little bit difficult because I am a right-handed person, and I have tried painting with my left hand, and I'm really not very good at it. But yeah, just working in the opposite direction would be about the best thing I can offer. But this is all of my demos are they're live, like we are right now. If you're watching this like after July 15th, in the morning, then you're probably watching the replay. So, and at that point, you can kind of work it in reverse. You can watch a step and then your application will go the opposite way. I went from left to right. You just go from right to left. That would be my about my only advice I can give, I guess. The other option might be, and this is an idea for you to work this way. But of course, you would have to, that would work, right? I think it would if you were to work upside down, but then you'd have to, your brain has to make that leap as well. Anyway, so I'm going to go back to adding in my shadows. Hi, Angela. Okay, so I'm coming in and going to add in some of these darker areas. There's this dark area above. Now, so I'm intentionally trying to make this darker because this little, let's show you. This little dip here, you can see that what's behind is darker. So I need to come in with darker color here. I'm going to rinse my brush and give it a blot. Smooth that out a little bit. And I'm intentionally injecting more color into this than the reference picture has. Oh, cerulean, I like the cerulean. And I think it's just about time for me to take something like my Perylene green. And so my Perylene green, maybe I can do it this way. Perylene green's a really dark green. If you don't have something like this in your palette, you can also take Payne's Gray, mix it with some yellow, and you'll get a very, very dark green. So we need a very dark green in some of these areas. Now, I'm not aiming to do it really dark in the start. I just, I'm going to do it thinly to begin with. And I really want to make this sort of, I don't want clean edges on this. So if I paint with the side of my brush, like the side of the bristles, instead of the point, I get much more natural looking mark making. I think this needs to be a little bit more sort of olive, if you will. How can I make it more olive? I can add a little burnt sienna to that. And that will make it a bit olive. But again, I want that sort of speckled effect. And so I want to have my brush just skim the surface of the paper so that it catches the texture on the paper and gives that to me naturally. And then we have this other dark area here. If I overload my brush too much, it just will end up being solid. But if I use the side of my brush, I get more of an irregular edge to what I'm doing. And it's almost perfect the way this moss is accentuating what's in front. And that works out perfectly in this case. Oh, it didn't blot my brush, and now I got a crispier edge than I wanted. So I have to be mindful of what is in my brush. It's so easy to forget, isn't it? You're painting away and it's like, oops, I forgot to blot. And that's when you get the solid lines that you're not really looking for, or maybe a blossom that you weren't looking for. If it hits something that's only damp. All right, so I want a little more over here. I love dry brush. It's just such a neat way of creating natural texture. Yeah. So far it kind of looks a mess, but we have more to do. I still have to do some of the rock back in here. I need to do the rock in front. So before I carry on too far with anything, I am going to go back to my bluey grays, and I'm going to put some of that in here. Now there's a little margin. Let's see if I can slide this. Hard to get everything on the screen, but there's a little margin of grassy area there. It's just a little sliver, so I want to try to keep that. This can be a little wetter. I'm just going to put a little variation in here. So a little bit of raw sienna. A little bit of that darker green. And I'm going to take my stylus and do a little scoring to create some of the crevices and cracks in these rocks. Don't need a lot. I just need a bit there. Okay, look at just that little passage right there. How interesting all the colors are. So when I'm painting, I'm trying to make all the areas like, so if somebody takes the time, sees the whole painting, I mean, of course, that's the thing that has to work. But if they get sort of drawn in, I'd like to see all these little interesting areas as well. I don't want these to be dominant. Don't misunderstand. I don't want these dominant, but I do want them interesting. So I'm going to come down. I'm going to do a little bit on this rock here. Whoa, that was a lot of color. I just pull some of that off. I'm going to go with my burnt sienna at the bottom. Take my stylus and I'm going to create some of the little strange shapes in the rocks. Just keep in mind, whenever you do this, anything you paint over top is going to make those stand out even more and more and more. So just be aware of that effect. Okay, so I've got the prominent lighter rocks in here. Then there's these sort of moss-covered rocks at the bottom, and they don't really have any of the cracks and all of that sort of thing. So I'm done with all the making cracks with this stylus tool right now, and I want to just focus now a little bit on what I'm going to do in these other blank areas that I haven't filled in yet. So I'm not really looking to detail all of this just yet. If I detailed all of this and then I went ahead and put the other things in, I might discover that I actually should have done something different in this area in order to make it all work together. So I'm building this up from light to dark rather than finishing one particular spot at a time. I have seen people do that. And in some respects, I have done that myself, depending on what it is. But 9 times out of 10, this is the approach I take. I start off with middle values, then I work my way to darker values, and then finally details, which are often darker as well. Sometimes the details are lighter, in which case I might be using some either white paint, or that might be one of my first steps where I save the whites with masking fluid or something like that. But in landscapes, I rarely do that. So this distant hill, it's kind of a purple blue, so that's what I'm mixing up here, my purples and my blues. And I'm going to make this a little bit light. It's really strange with these wildfires. I went outside to see what all the buzz was about, and boy, it did smell like my neighbor was having a campfire. But the air's got this sort of weird red haze. All right, so I put a couple of streaks of blue through there in a diagonal, like this diagonal direction here, to show that this is the upside of the mountain. We're looking at the downside of the hill here, and then the upside of the distant hill. So those few little streaks that I added in kind of give you that idea that that's the direction of that hill. Okay, I'm going to take a dryer to this just because I want to do the green on top here, and I can't because it's going to run together if I do that. Thank you, Janice. You missed my round palette? I still have my round palette, and I use it. For now, this is it. But I will come back to my round palette again as I work on something a little larger. But for the smaller format, I'm kind of enjoying working in this book right now. I've almost filled it up. I have about 4 more books like this, so I can fill these up and keep going forever. But I will change it up, and I will do some different formats. And remind me at the end, like when I'm getting closer to the end of this one, remind me. I'll show you what I was working on yesterday. I'm kind of working in the small format, so I can show that to you pretty easy. But I do need a reminder because I almost forgot last week to show you something in my sketchbook. So, and I can show that at the end too, if you prefer. Since I did forget at the very end last week, there's a delay in the chat, so somebody did remind me, but I'd already signed off. You lost sound. It might be on your end, Patricia. It looks like my sound is still working here from my end. But of course I'm saying that and she probably can't hear it. Maybe somebody could type that to her. So I'm going to use, Now, okay, so let's talk a little bit about colors here. These colors, it's an overcast day. This is not green like your lawn. This is a very olive type of grass, right? And these are the meadows and things at the shoreline where the sheep will just graze, and so it's all very, very short, very kind of dull. So if I take my sap green, and this is something many beginners tend to do. They'll go, oh, this is okay, I've got a green here, and that, it's coloring book, right? So it is if I go with my just sap green, I get this really vibrant, bright green. Well, that's not what I'm looking for. I need something kind of dull. So I'm going to take some raw sienna, and that's a start, right? It does dull it down some. But I still think it might be a little bit too much in some of these areas. So if I grab something warmer, like towards a red, like this burnt sienna, I take burnt sienna and sap green. I get something closer. So this is raw sienna. It's actually probably more raw sienna than it is probably more raw sienna than it is sap green. This is more burnt sienna than sap green. Somebody else having trouble with sound? My sound keeps dying? Oh. It doesn't look like it's dying on my end. I wonder if it's an internet connection thing. It does look like it's working from this end. But I will carry on. So this is sap green and raw sienna here. We have burnt sienna and sap green here. So that's going to give me two kind of dull greens. Ever since the dryer? It looks like it's working on my end. I'm not sure what else I can do. Okay, some of you are saying it's working, so it may be some interference on your end. It could be an internet issue or something like that. Okay, so let me carry on. Burnt sienna, sap green. There's other ways I can arrive at a similar color. And you think, oh no, that looks brown now. But watch. If I take and I put that on there, it's not really that far off. Now let's take the raw sienna and sap green. Even that's too bright, I think. But anyway, it's going to be somewhat dull. That will work. If I wanted to dull this even further, if I wanted to make that even duller, if I looked at that just by itself, you'd say, that's no color for grass. But it is the correct color for what we have here. So choosing the right colors will definitely change the the vibe of your painting, right? It's not a bright sunny day. The grass isn't really green even in the bright sunshine. So if I were to take something, a cool color, for example, like maybe a cerulean blue. No, maybe not cerulean. Let's do a little cobalt and add that in. They would get even duller. Be actually a little bit more greenish. I don't want to start adding a new thing into the palette here. So burnt sienna is my warmest color that I have. So one is a little warmer and one is a little bit cooler. But how thin or thick I put it on will also be a factor here. Let me try some. I'm going to close, I hate to close my windows here, but I'm going to close some of my windows that I have open. I'm just closing a bunch of stuff on my screen. Hopefully I can get back to those. All right. As long as I don't close this screen, I'm okay, I think. But now that I have my variation of greens, one thing I could add into here to dull it even further would be a little bit of purple. Yes, Renee says making the right color is a hard thing to do for a beginner. So here's one thing I would suggest to you beginners. That is, do as I've done here. You've got your printout. Have something like don't use photo paper because you can't really put a color swatch on your photo paper. But well, let me just slide this over. You can take a scrap of your regular paper, your regular watercolor paper. What I would suggest to you is to do a little swatch at the edge. Don't do it in the middle. Do it at the edge. And then hold it right beside what you're going to be painting. And that's going to tell you whether you've got the color right or not. It's not going to tell you what colors to use, but it's going to tell you whether the color you've mixed is correct. And as you're mixing in colors, make a mental note of what you're doing. And once you've hit the right one, write it down. So you've got this little card with all your colors that you're going to work on in your painting, all worked out on this card that you can save and use as a reference, maybe for your next painting. You'll have your color combinations. You'll come to another painting and you go, oh, what was that green that I used on that painting of the cliffs? And you'll be able to pull out this card and go, oh, there it is. And you'll have the combination. And before you know it, these things will eventually become intuitive. You'll already know the formula. You know, it's like when you follow a recipe for something, to the letter, and then before you know it, you've got the recipe memorized, and you can make your brownies from scratch and not even have to pull out the recipe card. So that's one thing that I would suggest. Now for another area, let's add a little purple. Sorry, I'm harping on a little bit about the color mixing, but let's take this purple, and if I mix some of that in, this is going to give me something. Oh, that'll be a good color for down here, for example. If I add even more purple, it might be better for up here. I think that needs a bit of blue. So I'll add a little blue. make it more of a blue purple. That's going to be better for there, right? So you can see how I can color match things before I actually put it onto my paper. Okay, so let's jump in now that I've got kind of those color combinations worked out. Since I have that mixed already, I'm going to bring this down. This has the bit of purple and cobalt blue mixed in. So I'm gonna, because I'm working on dry paper, I want to have wet color. So it starts off kind of purple. Then it gets a little more green as it comes down. So I'm going to go into some of this darker green that I had down here and mix it in with my duller green so I get an even duller color. I want to go into the lighter versions of this. I'm deliberately not making this all uniform. Sometimes I'm putting variations in it by adding a little streak or two through there, that kind of thing. But I do need wet color if I'm working on dry paper. And I need that because otherwise I'm going to have a bunch of brush marks in here. I like the little bands of variation in through this, so I can put this in, and it's going to get a little bit more green over on this other side. Put a little bit more sap green into that as I come over here. These subtle variations, I just love them. I think that they are so, it's what makes this kind of a scene so interesting. A little bit more of that purpley mixture in here. So it's all connected. But you notice that each of those colors I put on a whiter paper. I didn't put, like if I stirred all of this together and kind of blended it, like tried to blend it this way, that's when the mud would happen. Because if I take the purple and I mix it with this green, it ends up just all looking like, that's going to just end up looking like mud. So no, mud isn't entirely bad. I can come through and do a streak or two of these muddy colors. It's not a bad thing. There's going to be some variations through here. But if I tried to mix all of that wash, I would be in trouble. If you're adding anything into a wet wash, you do need to make sure that your paper is still wet. If you go in and it's semi-dry and you're trying to put, like you pick up wet color and you put that on there, you're going to end up with blossoms all over the place. Blossoms aren't bad, but they wouldn't be intentional in this case because you're trying to keep this sort of diagonal happening. You don't want, circular blossoms or something like that. So I'm going to take a little bit of stronger mix here, and right at these edges where the grass kind of hits the cliff, it's a little bit darker right at that edge. So I'm coming in here with a little bit of dark. Now, it doesn't go all the way around. That would be silly because you can't see the other part that's sort of dropping off on the on the far side. You can only see the side that's facing us. So only this side of the cliff, where the cliff meets the grass, can you see this this darker shadow. So you can see I'm using drier color. If I can take my brush and do that through the color and it doesn't all fill back in, that you can tell that that's drier color that I'm using. Okay, so our cliffs are starting to shape up. We definitely do need some more details, but I kind of like where this is going. I'm going to add some of these darks in here on these mossy areas as well. Make them a little darker. And there's a good dark right here. And a few little bits here and there. This one's going to be especially useful, this dark one right here, because it describes the shape of this rock formation in front. Side of my brush, just getting that a little bit darker. Okay. So other places where we need a bit of darkening is, you know, some of these areas, especially close to the water's edge. I'm going to do the water in a bit, but I would normally just do the water and then come back to this, but I want to focus on the cliffs just for teaching purposes. So I'm going to take some raw sienna. Look how vibrant the color seems all of a sudden. But if I mix that with purple and green, that's going to get dull real fast. I could mix a bit of blue in, like I can have all kinds of variations here. I don't have to have a particular color. It's definitely a dirty, muddy color. But with my brush horizontal, so if you're left-handed, it would be this way. You're going to start at the water's edge. And I'm just going to sort of flick up to create this wetter edge of the rock here. So I'm not drawing the brush along the edge to like outline it or anything like that. I'm going to, oh gosh, you should see the color of the sky out here. I might have to show it to you just because it's so unique. It's something you don't see every day. I'm going to soften a little bit of this, so I'm going to blot my brush and just hit some of this along the top edge of that. It's still going to have a little texture, but it's not going to be quite as harsh. So I'm going to carry on. It becomes a little less prominent as we get over to this side here. Rinse and blot, and I'm going to soften that edge. All right, so I'm going to take some more of this this little rock here. It's pretty dark. It's pretty much all dark like that. This is really neat transition on this one rock. So it's starts off dark down here. Rinse and blot, and I'm just going to hold, and notice the angle I'm holding my brush. It's this way, not this way. Okay, so from above, so only the point of the brush is going to soften up that color. So it creates a nice sort of transition up the rock. And I'm just going to carry on with some of this. I can see where my pencil shaded some of these places, so I know that's where I need to have some extra darks. Rinse and blot. Soften. I'm not softening everything. I want you to note that I am just softening portions of it. All right, so I actually want to have that dark there. Could use a little more there, I think. Softening as I go. If you wait too long, like if you try to bite off more than you can chew, then you'll probably end up with hard lines where you don't want them. I'm going to take a bit of that burnt sienna and purple, because that can actually give you some really neat color combinations as well. And I see a little bit of this variation through here. The variations are so interesting. And let's muddy up some of that, and I'm going to paint in that triangular shape there on the right hand side. Yes, the unique sky from the smoke. It is crazy color here. You want to see? Let me see if I can. You'll have to excuse my mess in my studio, but I'll see if I can get this working here. Okay, I don't know if I can get this to work, but I'll try. It is, and you can't see much of the sky, but you can see sort of what's what it looks like through the window here. Let me just switch my camera. Now I can't, my cord doesn't reach from the camera to the computer very far, so let me see if I can zoom in a bit. All right, that's what you're seeing right now. I know it's not a mistake. It's just I have to zoom in here a little bit. I have to adjust a few things here, and I'll show you because I can actually zoom. Okay. And let me see. Can you see out the window? Oh, maybe you can't. Sorry, I'm going to make you seasick here for a second. It's this, oh, it's not really coming up on the camera, but it is this really weird haze. Yeah, I'll have to, I'm sure you're probably going to see some pictures on Facebook and that sort of thing. But anyway, back to the demo. So, why is it not switching? Oh, I know why. Hang on. There we go. Back to the demo. Okay, so I'm going to take a bit of, I'm going to start bringing in a few darks here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a bit of my messed up color here, my muddiness, my burnt sienna, sap green. Well, you're throwing everything but the kitchen sink, a little purple. And I'm just going to use some neutral tint. Now, neutral tint is kind of a gray, but if I add that in, that's going to make that quite dark. And that's going to be good for some of these little rock formations here in the water. And these ones, I didn't have them all drawn in because I really didn't want to overdraw all of my stuff in my picture. But I can use my brush. Like nobody's going to be counting these and saying, "Oh, Shelley, you missed a little mound there." You know, that's kind of silly. So, but I am looking at the proximity, the angles, the size, the general shape of these. It's not going to be perfect. Definitely not. But it's certainly going to be close enough. If you want perfect, stick with the photo. Don't bother painting it. Okay, and there's a few out here as well. So we've got some back here. And I'm going to darken this one as well. Just painted the back of my paper. So these are some of the extra darks that you can come in and really kind of separate things and create some stronger contrast. Can be quite amazing in the final steps of your painting. The water I'm leaving because I wanted to put the rocks in before the water because of all the surf. I'm going to see if I can do this without using white paint, but I may end up using a bit. if I don't successfully capture all of the white. I try to avoid it if I can, but okay, so I'm looking where the extra darks are. I want to make sure that I'm accentuating those, softening edges if I need to. I did something like this in my sketchbook, but this is more of a painting, I guess. This scene. This was quite cool. This place in Ireland. This is on the west side, near Achill Island. Okay, little bits of dark here and there. I'm going to use this sparingly. I thinned it down, and I'm adding in a little bit of that brownish ridge there. Not too tidy. I want to keep the texture going on there. If I wanted to add a little bit of the verticals, I could with the stylus. Okay, so it's all getting pretty interesting. I'm noticing though I'm missing a bunch of green up here, so I need to come back to some of my muddier greens and get that in here. This mossy effect, I kind of missed out on that. So I'm bringing that down in this part of the hill, the cliff. A lot of this is happening with the side of my brush so that I get that broken edge effect, which is beautiful in watercolor, or in any painting really. Nice. Okay, so I like how that looks. A little bit of that can go in here too, I think. Anywhere else? Maybe a little bit over here. When the little bits of moss are so small, you wouldn't be able to paint it with the pointy end of your brush. Just use the side and catch the texture of the paper. That's the easier way to go. All right, little bits of this mossy stuff throughout. A little bit at the shoreline there. Little pockets of it here and there. So I'm just trying to catch a few little spots. Oh, and I forgot the grass right here. Always one more thing, right? and a little bit of duller green just for this, and thin down just for this top right there. Okay, so I see little things where, you know, maybe a little bit more colors needed in a few places. I do feel like this needs to be a little bit darker to make the one in front stand out a bit more. So that's what I'm going to do right now, is I'm just going to get this toned down a little bit. Nope, that's got to be a little darker. I'm going to use a little, just a little bit of neutral tint here. It's just going to help me along, just with a little bit of defining on this edge. But I sure don't want to have a solid outline. That's definitely something I want to stay away from. But see how that pushed that back, and now this rock here is coming forward. So it's that push-pull effect that we need to put in the paintings in order to make things read correctly. Just a little, and it wasn't very much. Boy, that was just a little bit that I put in there. Go easy with the neutral tint. It can, you know, it's a gray basically, and it can suck out all those lovely colors we put in earlier. But it is a good way to help push back or help bring other things forward. So now let's do some water. I'm just going to wipe this off. And I'm going to need a fairly substantial amount of this color here. Note that there's some variations. There's actual shadows in the water where we have like a deeper turquoise kind of color back there. Deeper color turquoise here, and here where it's close to the rock, so you're getting a little bit of that, you know, the darker areas of the rock being reflected in the water. So I'm going to use quite a bit of, that's cobalt blue. Let me pull this down just a little bit. Cobalt blue, cerulean blue, and there'll be a little bit of neutral tint to darken a bit. So I'm going to take some, bring this here. Neutral tint and cerulean. So let's see how that looks. That's got a little too much neutral tint in it. I need more cerulean. Okay, so let's try. Oh, that's better, right? That's better for this for the deeper areas. And mixing together the two to see if I'm fairly close here. And I actually find that almost a bit too pretty of a color, shall we say. If I dull it just slightly, I'm going to grab a little bit of this deeper color and mix that in just a little, thin it down, and I have something that actually is a better match. So it's funny, you know, this, just the saturation of the color here is a little too unnatural, and that little hint of neutral tint just gave it the right amount of dullness, just a little bit. So it's mostly this area here that I'm going to be working with. And as I work, I'm going to try to avoid these areas of white. I'm going to leave the white of the paper wherever possible. So if I'm working on dry paper, I need to make sure that my brush is loaded, completely loaded, because I don't want to have a bunch of seams and brush marks in my water. Now the good thing is that there's kind of these streaks that go through, so that's going to help us avoid any issues. And I'm going to start here. Now I know I'm not starting with the dark, but I'm going to put more dark on top. Okay, leave a gap where the surf is. And I'm working pretty much in a horizontal format here, just because I know that I need to leave just little hints of it here and there. But definitely around these rocks, I need a bit of that that white paper showing through. Sort of dancing between rocks here. Careful along that edge of the rock. Don't accidentally hit the rock itself, or you're going to end up with a blue streak through your rock. Now this comes, when I say leave white around rocks, I'm meaning around the base of the rock. It doesn't really make sense to leave that above the rock. So here, for example, almost went to the wrong color there. I'm going to take my deeper blue and I'm going to stick some of that in here right now. Love that. My other mix. Now you're not obviously going to be able to make it identical to the photo, and who cares, because in the blink of an eye it's all changed anyway in life. The little hits of white throughout are quite interesting. Okay, let's get some of that dark put in here while the paper's still wet. Continue through here. So this would be negative painting. I'm trying to make the white by not painting it. And I'm going to go back to a little bit more of the darker little bits through here, closest to the shore. Yeah, Karen says, I bet the sunset will be exceptionally beautiful tonight. It might be. The last time we had, a couple of years ago, we had the same issue with wildfire smoke. And the sun just looked, it wasn't an exceptional sunset, but what was really strange is the sun was bright red. Like it almost looked neon red. Very, very weird. Pardon me. Maybe it's the smoke. Although we have air conditioning, so I should be fine. But not an outdoor day, that's for sure. Okay, so I'm just, fussing a little bit here with a couple of the little details. I don't want to leave like a white outline all along the shore. That looks a little strange. So in some places, I'm actually taking the blue up to the shore. Some of it needs blending in a little more with a blotted brush. And all right, lean back, see how it's looking. I could fuss a little bit, I suppose, with a detail here and there. It's mostly when you start bringing in the extra darks that this really starts to feel dimensional. If you don't have a full value range, like sometimes I'll have people say to me, well, my painting looks flat. What am I doing wrong? Well, you stop too soon. You need to have some of those darks in there so that the darks can make the lights really sing. Now I'm coming in with a few marks with my brush because I didn't get the stylus texture in there quite in the same way, or on time, or whatever the case may be. So I'm coming in with a few little marks in here. Whenever you add contrast, the eye goes there. So in terms of focal point, and I can see something dramatically wrong with one part of this, and you tell me. I'm going to see if you can spot it too. What's wrong with my values? What needs a deeper value? This is a test. I'm giving you that. Yeah, actually, B-Fly 5, never show friends or family your reference picture, then your painting's always just right. Yes, that is true. So have you spotted what needs adjusting here that I haven't yet done? I'll kind of avoid it until you've had a chance to answer, because there's always a chat delay, which is why sometimes I miss the chats at the end of the or the question. Sometimes somebody throws a last second question in there, but there's a delay, and therefore I don't always see things in real time, your questions. So if I seem slow to respond sometimes, that's often the reason why, because there is this kind of delay. I'm just adding a little bit more blue in here and there, like that in the shadows. Kind of neat colors. I like this sort of turquoisey color. Might throw some of that in. Oops, that's a little too much, so we'll just blend that out. This is just a combination of some blues and a little bit of that muddy green. I put most of my fresh colors down at the beginning of the painting. That way I have, you know, that gives me permission to put in some of the duller colors to build up textures or add shadows and that sort of thing without losing all my brighter colors. You know, the first layers that I put in. So you should see a whole, I wouldn't call it colorful, but it is definitely more colorful than the automatic gray that you would just go with. So yes, this rock here is definitely too, it needs to be a darker value against what's in the water. So I'm coming in, and notice those, I come in with the dark, but then the cracks that I created with the stylus are now showing up even more. So compared to the water, this does need to be darker. So I'm coming in, building up a little bit on here. That was too much burnt sienna. But yes, that one definitely needed it. So as you practice your painting and, you know, trying to get better at your craft, you'll get better at sort of stepping back and asking yourself, what is it that needs more contrast? Where do I need to bring more contrast? Now, I think this little section right here, that's my focal point. I won't say just this rock. I mean, this is pretty cool here too. But this rock is the one that really needed the most contrast here in order for it to be a focal point. I needed the contrast against the water, and I didn't realize how light it was until the water went in. So this is why I said earlier on that, you know, if you want to really get your values right, put all your mid values down. So that's why I'm now going back to redo the rocks. It's because it felt like it was dark enough when it was against white paper, but now that it's against blue paper where the water is, I can tell, oh, that's just not dark enough. So this gives me the value change that I needed right there. And so now there's no question. That's where you look. That's where your eye is drawn to. Before that, you didn't know where to look. You know, it was kind of like a piece here and a piece here and a piece here. It was a little bit everywhere, but now that there's the contrast, it really shows. So a couple of you said a bit on the right-hand side. The cliffs seem a bit light. The big rock needs touches. Yep, I think you're correct. And these ones here in the foreground, I could use more contrast there. And so the final touches of your painting are going to be this kind of evaluating. building darks, that sort of thing. But I would wait until the end of your painting to see how everything works together rather than doing it as you go along, because as I showed you, this was deceiving. So come to the end, see how everything works together, not just the spot you're working on, but how everything works together. And here, I can just bring in a few diagonal lines here. I'm not going to tell you every single combination. Most of this stuff is dark and muddy. So you can use a combination of, paints you have already on your palette. But, okay. And if I wanted a little splash coming up onto the shore, I could use a couple of specks of white, and that might be all I use it for. But I think I would like to see a couple more darks up in here. Now that these areas are dry, I want to just have a little texture on the land surface here. So that feels a little bit more completed. It felt like it was just a wash in there and nothing more. It needed a little something. See, that's feeling better. Okay, so I could go on and on and on. I could fiddle and fuss until the cows come home, but I'm going to call this one done. So I did say, and I won't forget today, the little rock on the right in the water. Oh yeah, this one here. Yeah, that needs something, doesn't it? We'll give it a little bit of love right here. And separate it from the background. There we go. It's got a little something. There we go. So this one's done, and I said I would show you some of the things I've been working on, because this is kind of fun. So I have a show coming up. If you're local and you're in the Oakville area, the Monday of the August long weekend, I'm going to have a booth at Art in the Park in Oakville. And if you're in the area, I would absolutely love it if you stopped by, introduced yourself, and said hello. But, tell me what your online handle is as well, because I cannot connect some of your online handles with your actual names. So anyway, so here's what I've been working on. A whole bunch of minis. Now I put these on a half sheet. And these are all long, skinny, vertical format. So I've got a bunch of verticals that I did, a whole bunch of different subjects. I've only got a couple more spots to fill in, and I'll turn this around so you can see the other ones. So there's a little sampling of these are just little minis, and these are not going to be under glass. These are going to be mounted on plaques and available at a very reasonable price. So I'm going to have I want to have a price range in my booth. So yes, my big ones will be there, but I'm going to have a lot of affordable ones as well. So do stop by and see me at the show there if you happen to be coming. That is going to be August 3rd from 10 to 4, I believe, and that is at it's the Art in the Park at Bronte Heritage Park, I believe it is. And I will have a booth there, and I will have some of those things available. Now, I did forget to show something in my sketchbook last week, so I'm going to grab that. I grabbed the wrong sketchbook. It was in this one. So I did post it on Facebook, but some of you might not have seen it. And I said that I would show this bicycle, which I did in gouache. So a little show and tell here at the end of the day. So this was a little bicycle that I did in gouache. I don't work with gouache very much. We haven't really gotten to be friends yet, but I'm working on it. So I'm trying different things. Here we go. Zoom out a little bit so we can get the whole thing in there. There we go. And you wanted to see how I date things. So this was Bicycles for Guests at Sheen Falls Lodge, Kenmare. And that the date that I took the reference picture for this is the date that I put in here. But I did actually paint it on a different day. So sometimes I'll put both dates on there. I think I did here, where I put outlet at Sheen Falls. This was Ireland, April 29th, 26. But I put the date that I actually painted it here in the corner as well. So that's how I'm marking it. If I'm working from a reference picture, I'm putting down the date from my photos. And yeah, so let me just, oh, my camera's all funky now because I took it off to to show you outside. So I'm just going to say thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this one. I know it was a little bit long, and well, not a little bit long. It was good and long, but that was our demo for today, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you are in the line of the smoke, but stay safe, stay cool, and we'll see you again next week, okay?